president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
When we do have secret prisons, that is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. My name is Rafael Arancibia. Mark Levine is en route and will be with us as soon as he can. Tonight, we are joined with Senator Emily Miller, former state senator from the Virginia 34th District, and she will be talking about an upcoming special election to replace Senator Mark Herring, who is now Virginia's Attorney General. This is the Virginia's 33rd state Senate district, which has part of Fairfax County and then stretches all the way out toward past Leesburg and heads out to. And let's actually do a hot swap here with our host who actually just walked in. Mark, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, Raphael, for taking my place for a minute or two. I apologize to my viewers and to Senator Miller. I had a flat tire coming here.
That's a good excuse.
And I just managed to get enough air in it. Hopefully it won't go flat again. So welcome to the Inside Scoop. Again, thank you to Raphael for filling in. I catch my breath and tell you why I am here. I am here because there's an election Tuesday, January 21st. Did you know that? This Tuesday? Coming up, there's an election. It's an election that will determine, I know Senator Miller knows this, but maybe you didn't know this. This election will determine who controls the Virginia State Senate. Will it be Democrats or Republicans? That's how important this election is. And to voters in Loudoun County and Fairfax County, it will be up to you to decide who controls Virginia's Senate. And so we're going to talk about why that's so important and why you should go out there and vote for Jennifer Wexton. She's a Democrat running, and this is all to fill Mark Herring's seat. You now know Mark Herring has been elected Attorney General. If you were in Herring's district, you've got to get out and vote. Your vote will be more important here, dare I say, than a presidential election or a congressional election. Because in those elections, well, you're one of many, many people voting. The last special election for a state senator was decided by 9 votes. And you know what? They're fighting over it now. Yeah, right. Every vote counts. There was a 14% turnout. Your vote will determine who controls Virginia's future. Will it help the new governor, Terry McAuliffe, do the things he wants to do, or will it be a Republican agenda? Your vote will decide. So let me introduce my very esteemed guest. Again, Senator Miller, I apologize for being a little out of breath and running late. Things happen, but it really is my esteemed honor to have you right here on the Inside Scoop.
Well, thank you.
You were the first, I believe, woman senator in Virginia, in Northern Virginia.
In Northern Virginia.
In Northern Virginia. You were elected back in 1987. Yes. And served for how many years?
Just 4 years. I put in a bill to allow women at Virginia Military Institute, and that kind of was not going well with the VMI alumni, and they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to defeat me. But the United States Supreme Court agreed with me, and now women go to VMI.
I was going to say, today, that's not even seen as controversial.
I know.
But in your day, that would have been the progressive thing.
That was 91.
That really wasn't that long ago. That was just 20 years ago.
Right.
So you're here to endorse Jennifer Wexton.
Right.
Tell the people here who may not know who she is, who is she, why is she running for state senator?
Well, Jennifer is a lawyer. She's a wife, mother of 2. She was a special prosecutor. If you've seen her TV ad, she talks about, working to convict criminals. Particularly, she had 2 high-profile murder cases, but she also did misdemeanors. She did felonies. She was a special assistant in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Loudoun County. She's also been a substitute judge.
So she's a prosecutor, basically.
But a lawyer. She's also
criminals behind bars.
She's done a lot of other things like doing pro bono work. She's been a guardian ad litem for at-risk children.
Now, a lot of people don't know what that is. That's a lawyer that represents children. So basically, you've got a child that's been abused, and they can't be represented by their parents who've done the abuse. So she's been hired to represent the children then.
That's right, and sometimes she does it pro bono. So she's not always being
Meaning without pay.
Without pay.
Which is pretty
and
amazing, really, because those cases are a lot of work. They're a lot of hard work.
Yes, they really are. And, you know, lawyers don't get enough credit for doing that. And she took that on. And as I said, she has 2 children, young children. So I know she has very, you know, she wants to help children. And I think that's important because many times, you know, there are issues in the General Assembly dealing with children that never get enough press or publicity. So she's going to deal with the top issues, but there are other issues she cares about that we sometimes do not.
Well, let's talk about those. What are the issues which Jennifer Wexton could make a difference if she's elected this Tuesday, January 21st?
Well, before I go into the usual ones like transportation and education, the economy and all of that, there's one issue that has come to the forefront that just now is getting the attention it should. And when I was in the Senate, it was one of the issues that I grabbed hold of, and it is mental health. And as we know now, because of Senator Creed Deeds' son, that all of a sudden people are saying we need to do more in the field of mental health. We need to do more, you know, with the Community Services Board. Jennifer,
what is the Community Services
Community Services Board there are 40 in the Commonwealth, and they are in different areas of the state. The state is the Commonwealth, excuse me, this is a Commonwealth, not a state.
That's true.
I was on the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board, and they deal with the issues in the community of mental health, mental retardation, and substance abuse.
So how do they deal with those issues?
They have a budget where they can have services in the community, like group homes, like helping with, you know, different functions that people who have those types of problems.
So, for example, we know that mentally ill people need help for themselves,
right.
And we also know that sometimes people are so mentally ill they actually cause violence. We've seen that in Virginia, both with Senator Deeds, but also Virginia Tech famously was a person in need of mental health care. What is something that Jennifer can do, has proposed to do, to make things better for people with mental health problems?
Well, first of all, she understands the problem. Again, the community services boards do services in the community. We had institutions in Virginia that took care of all the people. They were put away, the mentally ill, the mentally retarded. Now the federal government has said, you got to shut them all down, all the institutions.
Really?
So oh yeah.
Why
yeah,
is that?
There was a federal case, and the judge decided, the federal judge in Virginia had to agree. The Northern Virginia Training Center, which has been a big issue in the papers lately, where they have the extreme mentally retarded citizens, they have to close down. Now, all of these citizens are going to be coming into the community and are going to be under the community services boards. So you need someone who understands this problem.
And of course, she's worked in the legal system.
Right.
She's worked with children. She knows.
And you need the funding. And let me tell you, when I was in the Senate, because I had served on the State Board of Mental Health, Mental Retardation, Substance Abuse, and on the Community Services Board, I had tried to make mental health and mental retardation one of the issues. But the General Assembly members, many of them, some of them did, but many of them did not understand the issues. And they thought we were throwing money away. Let's put people in institutions. And so it was not a sexy subject, as I was told, to be for and to, you know, be a champion of.
It's interesting because when the Virginia Tech massacre occurred, a number of Virginians talked about basically some kind of regulation for guns. There was a one gun a month idea. There was the idea.
We did have one gun a month.
We did, until the Republicans got rid of it. There was the idea that mentally ill people should not get guns. That someone who thinks that they're hearing voices and someone is out to kill them maybe shouldn't have control of a semi-automatic machine gun. And the Republicans at that time said, we don't want to regulate guns. We want to make sure sure that the mentally ill can get guns. We want to make sure that insane people can get guns, that terrorists can get guns. And the problem is not with the guns. Everybody should have a gun. Every child, every insane person should have a gun. But we need mental health, because then insane people won't be out on the streets to buy those guns. And now that we can't seem to get gun regulation through, now that we're talking about mental health, they seem to oppose that too.
But you never saw the money come through after the massacre. You never saw the people, saying, okay, we need to get more services in the community. We need to have more dollars spent, because people need services, which you need professionals, you need medication, you need a place for people to live, like a group home. And of course, nobody wants a group home in their neighborhood.
Well,
so,
and for those that don't know, and Senator Creed, of course, was a very prominent person. He ran for governor. His son was in desperate need of psychiatric care. They took him to get care, and there was literally not a bed for him. And because there was not a bed for him, his son, well, he was mentally ill, and he ended up attacking his father and killing himself. So and this is obviously just one high-profile example, but this goes on all the time in homes all across America.
Of course.
Tell me what Jennifer Wexton can do to make a difference.
Well, one, she understands the problem. She's a lawyer. She can come up with legislation. She can be there to vote for more money, to help get that money, work with the other senators, and I think most of the Democratic senators are in favor of putting more money into the system. Governor McDonald, before he left, said, there'll be more money, but you've got to vote for that money. You can put it in the budget, but the budget has to be voted on.
I want to talk about something else, because this is something that doesn't cost more money. It's absolutely free to the taxpayers of Virginia. Currently, under Republican leadership, the taxpayers of Virginia are required to subsidize poor people's health care in every state except Virginia, because even though the federal government has offered to pay for all the indigent citizens, the poor citizens of Virginia, to get free health care, they're going to pay every penny of it. Republicans said, we don't want your federal money. We want poor people just to lack health care. And what Governor McAuliffe has said is, this is silly. The federal government is giving us the money. We should take it for something called Medicaid expansion. I want to know, when we have to take a break, but when we come back from break, I want to talk about Medicaid expansion, because it sounds like this
and
formal
Jennifer's
term.
For it.
And Jennifer Wexton is for it. But basically what this is billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars from the federal government, financed by Virginia taxpayers, that either will go to Virginia citizens who need help, who need medical help, or we'll go outside the Commonwealth. And the Republican opponents actually want this money to go to Maryland and Delaware and not to go to Virginia citizens. And I don't understand that, but when we come back, I want to address that with you.
Okay.
Folks, if you want to call in, you can. Just pick up the phone and dial 571-749-1166, and you can join the show. We'll be right back right after this.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. My guest is former Senator Emily Miller, actually the first woman senator in the state of Virginia, from Northern Virginia, and she is endorsing Senator Jennifer Wexton. And the reason for that is because there's an election. Did you know that? An election Tuesday, January 21st. Most people in the Loudoun and Fairfax County districts, this is the former district of Senator Mark Herring, don't even know there's an election. So this is crucial, not just because we could elect Senator Jennifer Wexton, but because this will determine who controls the Virginia Senate. Will it be Governor McAuliffe have a Virginia Senate that he can work with to do things like the things I'm talking about with Senator Miller? Or will he have the party of no? The party that currently, the Republican Party, is refusing to accept tens of billions of dollars in federal aid so that poor people of Virginia can get health care, because Republicans believe that poor people should suffer. They actually believe that poverty is something that people, even if they get free health care, it should be rejected. Maybe because they don't like President Obama, maybe because they don't like poor people, maybe because people that are middle class and under don't vote for Republicans. I don't know. But this would include anyone living under the poverty line, and for some families, families of 4 or 5, it goes up to $30,000, $40,000. The point is, all this money is laying on the table, and the Republicans won't accept it. They won't take the free money, and instead they're requiring Virginians to subsidize people in other states. Now, Jennifer Wexton doesn't think that makes any sense. That's one of the reasons she's running for the Senate, and I know that you don't think that makes sense either.
It doesn't make sense. And by the way, just a little plug, if you want to vote, they are now having absentee voting.
That's important. Tell us about that.
So if you want to vote before Tuesday, January 21st, if you go to the electoral board website, they will tell you where you can vote and what hours.
And that would be for Fairfax County or Loudoun County?
Yes, Fairfax.
Both of them.
Both Fairfax County. You can look up Fairfax County. You can look up Loudoun County.
So just go to Google and type in Loudoun County Electoral Board or Fairfax County Electoral Board, and they'll tell you where you can cast your vote early.
Yes.
In case you're not able to cast your vote.
That's right.
On Tuesday,
if you can't be here Tuesday to vote, don't lose your vote.
That's very important.
Now, on the Medicaid, let me just say, it seems to be a Virginia tradition that we don't always accept federal money. We have in the past let money go to other states, like education money, because Virginia doesn't want to be dependent upon the federal government. So I've seen this over the years. So this is no surprise to me that they don't want to accept the Medicaid
crazy.
fund.
It doesn't cost us a thing.
It doesn't cost us a thing. The money that our taxes bring to Virginia, that tax money will probably go to another state if we don't accept the Medicaid expansion. And Jennifer feels like Governor McAuliffe does, that this is a waste of our taxpayers' money, and it's morally right to help these people. And also it will bring jobs, because with Medicaid expansion, you're going to have practitioners, you're going to have people that work at hospitals, doctor's offices. So that will bring also jobs to Virginia, and the Republicans refuse to accept that.
I'll tell you something else that doesn't make sense to me. Right now under federal law, if someone's in terrible need, if they have an emergency, they can go to the emergency room and they go to the hospital. And if they don't have insurance, well, the hospital has to pay for it. Fellow Virginia citizens have to pay for it. This would mean that actually Virginians do have to pay for the care, but all we have to do is say yes, just one word, yes, to the federal government, and now people can get ordinary care, and they can get paid, and they can get insurance companies to pay for these things rather than Virginia taxpayers. So it's interesting, if the Republicans raise your taxes, it's going to be to pay for some of these things because they're not accepting federal money. I'm wondering if we can get the clip. We have a resident humorist here.
Oh, okay.
Will Roberts, and he has talked about.
Is that like Will Rogers?
It's very much like Will Rogers. He considers himself a modern day Will Rogers, and he has given his own opinion on Medicaid expansion. Can we roll that tape, please?
Now, I hate to seem like a Pollyanna. That's a person who's always positive.
What a great day. You're a great person.
But it seems to me that the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, seems to be gaining some steam.
All aboard.
I mean, isn't that the main component of good health? A positive, not negative attitude? A person can never climb that mountain if they say they can't.
Oh, gosh, I'm falling. Oh!
The dreams and hopes of all Americans having health care is finally happening. But after all, who wouldn't want their friends and their neighbors to be healthy and stay healthy? I'll tell you who. Republicans that are refusing that free program, Medicaid, to help their constituents who need it the most. Who was it that said, "Love thy neighbor"? Can't remember. All this political pompousness, is it because Republicans don't like helping people? Or is it because they just don't like this president? Republicans, if someone offers you a helping hand, take it. Don't use it to slap them in the face. Who knows, you might keep enough voters, people alive to attend your own funeral. It would seem to me that Republicans that don't like this Medicaid program must have their own affordable care program for the people, called I Don't Really Care Health Care. I'm Will Roberts, and this is your Weekly Telegram.
So thank you, Will, for that. I always like to get a humorous take on it, but I never have understood. I understand that they fought against Obamacare, but now that it's here, and now that 25 states have decided to take the money, and 25 states haven't, and so basically Virginia has to subsidize the other states.
As I said, this is a Virginia tradition. This is not the first time it's happened, and I have never understood why we have turned down this money. But then, of course, this is Virginia, and it's a conservative state, and so that's one of the reasons they don't want to do it.
Let's talk about some other issues that Jennifer Wexton can make a difference on.
Transportation.
Yeah, transportation is crucial, particularly in Northern Virginia, because we sit in traffic a lot.
That's right. And I think, Governor McDonnell and Terry McAuliffe, when he was running, they sort of forged a partnership to say, let's get this transportation bill done. And it was bipartisan, and it was very much needed. And so now we have to make sure that that transportation bill is implemented.
And what does this do? Does it give us more lanes on the highways, more bridges being fixed? What kind of things?
I haven't read the bill, so I honestly don't know. It gives more money. Now, whether the money is going to go to the different localities or whether the VDOT is going to be able to
the Virginia Department of Transportation
to look and see what needs the most
help.
But
basically, if you're sitting in traffic, you're going to want transportation money.
Some people say, well, they don't want it to go to Metro. But as somebody who's used Metro when I went into the consulting firm in D.C. for many years, I took Metro, and it was great. I could read
I'll tell you something else. Jennifer Wexton's district includes Dulles Airport.
That's right.
And some of this money, I know, is going for the Silver Line, which takes us to Dulles Airport.
And we'll take the people that are going to or from the airport to the airport or from the airport.
Which would be great, because you'd save a lot of money from parking. And I'll tell you something, every international city I've ever been in has a train from the airport to the central city. This will be great for Dulles, it'll be great for Fairfax.
It'll be an economic boom too, because it means even more growth around that area.
That's true, because it's not just to Dulles, but
all the stops along the way.
That's right.
And it will mean people who have to commute to work, whether it's DC or Tyson's or anything, will have a way and we'll get more cars off the road.
Now the Silver Line, I believe, is planned to go all the way to Leesburg. Is that right?
That I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know. To Herndon at least. I know it's going.
It's going
pretty
quite far.
And that would include all these cities in the district that Jennifer will represent.
We also need transportation money for maintenance, because the highways we do have, the roads we have to be maintained. And so you'll see a lot of work on those and other highways, etc. So the transportation money is a start of getting maybe to some of our problems, but you've got to have people in the General Assembly who are going to say, let's implement this.
I want to talk about another issue, because the Republican legislature in the House of Delegates and even the Virginia Senate voted on a bill last session that required women who wanted to have abortions to have a metal rod. I don't know any way to say this delicately, so I'm not going to be delicate. A metal rod stuck into their vaginas against their will to do an ultrasound that's completely medically unnecessary, that they didn't want. It was a way to, I guess, torture women who wanted to have abortions. What is... I won't say senator, because I hope she will be, but what is Jennifer Wexton's position on women's right to choose?
Will work to get, the probe never took place because
it was stopped at the last minute.
But there's still that ultrasound bill, which of course does nothing for a woman who wants
Just makes
to
it
have
very
an abortion.
expensive and makes it very
more
hard.
expensive. She's very much also these TARP regulations about women's health clinics, where they have to be like an emergency room of a hospital. And what people don't understand are
Which is,
these
again,
women,
very expensive and unnecessary.
Yes, and these women's health clinics are not abortion mills, as the Republicans say. These health clinics help women who need mammograms, who need basic health services, women who can't afford them. And so abortions are such a low percentage of what they do. It is a woman's health clinic.
What other issues could because I know she's, for example, she's a prosecutor, so she's tough on crime. We're not going to have anyone that lets criminals out of jail. But at the same time, that must make her be very concerned about ethics. We know.
Well, that's what I was going to go into, was ethics, because as you know,
Governor McDonnell may be indicted soon. We don't know.
I'm from Illinois, so having a governor indicted is nothing new to me.
But it's new to Virginia.
It's new to Virginia, and it's not something you should happen to your governor.
Right.
And I think being a lawyer, being a woman, because I think women sometimes we considered more ethical. I think that this has brought in an issue that the General Assembly's taken up, but never has completely embraced. And now,
so this is the chance to basically stop the pay-to-play atmosphere in Richmond.
And she's going to be someone who's going to be there to vote for these ethics changes. And again, we've got to remember, she, as a senator, will have a vote. And all these issues, unless someone votes for the issues we care about, they're never going to take place.
So again, and she is the deciding vote. When the elections ended, there were 20 Republicans and 19 Democrats. If the Republicans get a 21st vote, they control the Senate. If the Democrats get a 20th vote, because we have the Lieutenant Governor's seat with Ralph Northam, the Democrats control the Virginia Senate. So what's amazing is the last special election, 14% turned out. 1 in 7 voters turned out. 6 in 7 stayed home, and it was a 9-vote difference. They're still challenging it. That means that if you're listening to my voice right now, your vote will count more than ever. Honestly, you have no excuse not to get to the polls and vote. Tuesday, January 21st, we suggest you vote for Jennifer Wexton because she's a Democrat. She'll support these democratic values, someone who cares about all of Virginia, someone who will take the federal money sitting on the table and use it for Virginians rather than requiring Virginians to subsidize out-of-state taxpayers. Please, whoever you want to vote for, get to the polls Tuesday, January 21st.
Or absentee vote.
Or absentee vote by going to Loudoun Electoral Board or Fairfax Electoral Board. Just Google it, check in. You have no excuse not to vote. Tuesday, January 21st election, Loudoun and Fairfax County. I want to thank former Senator Miller very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to have talked about Jennifer.
I really do appreciate it.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. Again, I appreciate your coming here. Remember, January 21st, there is an election. It's Tuesday. I just want to show you quickly who Jennifer Wexton is, and then we'll move on to the second part of the program. So this is Jennifer Wexton. Again, she's running January 21st, Tuesday. There is a special election, and we encourage you to vote for her. And our internet is a bit slow, but it should come in any second. That's the problem. While we're waiting for this ad, let me go ahead and introduce my next guest. Her name is Perrianne Boring. She is a Forbes she's an RT correspondent and a Forbes contributor.
Right.
Okay, so we'll get that right. Perrianne and I actually disagree on many things, but I'm sure she would agree that you should get out and vote whenever you can. Right, we can agree.
You should
on
always
that.
have your voice be heard.
You should
absolutely.
always have your voice be heard. We're going to be working on getting the internet and getting this one up here. So I want to talk with you tonight about really the war on poverty. So the war on poverty celebrated its 50th anniversary this year. Of course, President Lyndon Johnson put forward the idea that every American should have a chance to succeed, equal opportunity for all, what some like to call the American dream. And I would argue that while the job is unfinished, we still have the poor, they are still with us, that actually it's been a success to the extent that there are less people in poverty, and that these programs are working. We still have poverty, but that things like Social Security and Medicare and the Medicaid expansion that I was talking about, whether it's help for student loans or unemployment insurance or disability insurance, all these things give people a chance to succeed. And at a time when the poorest half of America has virtually no assets, has actually less than 1% of American wealth, at a time when the lowest 20% of America, frankly, there's only a 5% chance they're ever going to become rich, we have to maintain these programs to achieve the American dream. You disagree?
Well, I think what's more important, and what really the message that our founding fathers set for us, is the message of opportunity over equality. Instead of everyone having to be an equal, everyone having the opportunity to have income mobility. Here, because of free market capitalism, we have the ability to work hard and to advance above our peers and to gain our own wealth. And I'm a story of that. I come from middle of nowhere, Florida. I literally grew up on Orange Grove, and a lot of my friends, even my siblings, are in the same position I am because I decided to put my head down and work hard. And because of capitalism, because of business, and because of the opportunity to succeed, I have succeeded and I've done much better. And I think what's more important is to have a foundation where people can work instead of where we have a system where everyone is the exact same.
Well, let me be very clear. I am not arguing for socialism. I'm not arguing that every American should have exactly the same amount of wealth. Not at all. I'm arguing for more equality, not absolute equality. Currently, 1% of America controls 1/3 of the entire nation's wealth. 10% of America controls 2/3 of the entire nation's wealth. And as I pointed out, half America has less than 1%. And the problem with that is not only a fairness issue, which I think is an issue, but because basically people are living paycheck to paycheck, half of Americans are doing that, they can't put money in the economy. They can't afford to buy enough toys at Christmas, or to buy a new car, or to buy the things that would actually make our economy grow, as well as making their lives better off. So let me talk about where we agree. We both agree on more opportunity. We both agree that people should have the ability to rise from poverty. And I would argue that if you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't have food in your mouth, if you don't have basic health care or an education, it's really hard to rise out of poverty. So we should make sure that people have these basic minimums.
Well, the problem with some of these programs is that they're government funded, and it means they're just redistributing wealth instead of creating new wealth, which is what we do through growing business and growing our economy, which Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, these programs can't make the economy bigger. So
I actually think they can.
Well, I think the argument that a lot of people pose here is that the one third of, or the 1% is taking 1/3 of the entire pie. So at the expense of everybody else, they get a larger share of the pie. But I disagree with that. That's not true at all. What capitalism and what business does but what it actually does is it grows the pie to be even bigger, or they grow their new pies, so there's more, so the economy is even bigger and even more to offer. So when we grow businesses, when we grow our economy, we don't need these programs as much. And I do think that there's an argument for there needs to be a safety net,
a basic minimum for
but
every
where
American
we are
citizen.
today is we have this social blanket that actually suffocates people and it traps people in the circle of poverty.
Because when people get food stamps and can eat, they don't really feel suffocated. They feel liberated, because if they have to eat and they're starving, they're much more likely, frankly, to break into a store and rob it than they are to feed their children, because you have to.
But it also drives away private charities. So sometimes if there are people on food stamps, there's a less incentive for the private market to create these charities, because they know the government's there to back.
Here's why I hate that argument. So 50 years ago, before the war on poverty began, you know what? Did private charities take care of poor people? They did not. We had far more poor people than we do today. We had 35%
But you're saying that the income
poor.
gap is even wider today.
No, the income gap is wider, and it's been wider than it's been since the 1920s. But the basic minimums, the number of people living in poverty, is way lower. It used to be that 25% of the elderly lived in poverty. Now we have Social Security, now we have Medicare, and that's down to 9%. So these programs are working. Let me ask you a specific example. Student loans. So we have grants that allow kids go to college and to get a subsidized loan from the government. And this is often the ticket out of poverty. What's wrong with student loan grants?
Well, the problem is that because the government is subsidizing education, it makes the value of an education even less. So because we're giving away education for free, when you go to school and you get that degree, your degree is worth less. And on top of that...
Wait. Education is worth less because the government is helping people get there?
It's just the law of supply and demand, because everyone now has a basic degree. What is the value of that?
The learning that you have that you can use to apply to a job.
But a lot of people that are graduating from college, and unemployment is highest among this division, this age division, 18 to 25.
Yes.
It's because everyone is graduating with the same degree.
But it's higher among people that haven't gone to college than people who have gone to college.
But I think what's even more important to recognize is that the government makes a lot of money off of this program. Last year, the government made $38 million off interest rates off student loans, and they used that money to pay for Obamacare. So that's a perfect example of where the government is redistributing from young people. They're taking money from young people and using it to serve another program.
Here's the thing. The Republicans believe that basically the banks should profit off of students, that they should have this money. The government said, why should private industry profit from our subsidies? In other words, if the government is subsidizing students to go to college, shouldn't the money go to students or to colleges rather than go to the banks, which is the way the Republicans wanted? They said, no, the money should go to the government or the students or the college.
But the government subsidizes businesses all the time, and this is crony capitalism. This is another huge issue.
Well, we agree that they shouldn't subsidize
Absolutely.
businesses.
You have the Import-Export Bank that's giving all sorts of subsidies to Fortune 500 companies. You have subsidies to green energy companies. I mean, this is all subsidizing major companies that don't need government support.
Okay, well, on that we agree, and it's good to have agreement. We agree that the government shouldn't be subsidizing
So if you agree that they shouldn't subsidize corporations, why should they subsidize anything else?
I'll tell you why. Because I consider people to be more important than corporations. I know in Mitt Romney's eyes, corporations are people. I've never believed that. It seems to me that if you've got, I always use my example, Tiny Tim, right? So Ebenezer Scrooge has thousands of gold pieces, and he doesn't pay Tiny Tim's father enough to earn enough to pay for Tiny Tim, who's a 7-year-old. He's on crutches. He needs health care. And frankly, Scrooge has to be scared by a number of ghosts before he finally gives a little bit of money so Tiny Tim can have health care. It seems to me that Tiny Tim could well be a productive member of society, but if you're born into poverty, it's really, really hard to get out without some of this government aid. I mean, do you deny that it's hard to escape poverty in America?
When you're having to rely on government assistance just to survive, you're getting trapped in the circle of poverty.
See, government assistance let Tiny Tim walk, or ghost assistance, I guess, in the case of A Christmas Carol. But without government assistance, Tiny Tim is on crutches and can't be a very productive member of society. Why shouldn't at least children's health care Shouldn't that be something we all cover? It's not the kid's fault that he's on crutches.
No, absolutely not. And I think we can open our eyes to a whole new way of looking at this. And instead of always falling back on the government to support us and having to redistribute wealth through the government, there's a more productive way to do this. And this is through private markets, because private markets are more efficient than the government, hands down.
Private markets
all the time.
don't give a damn about Tiny Tim. The corporation doesn't
America
give a damn about Tiny Tim.
America is one of the most generous nations in the world. The people of America give to charities. People of America believe in philanthropy. And there are plenty of organizations out there that do plenty for the poor.
Then why is it that we have the same income inequality of it's Jamaica, last time I looked, Turkmenistan. There's 76 countries that care more for their poor more than we do, and there's only like 200 countries on Earth.
Well, some of these statistics that show stagnant incomes of the middle class aren't completely accurate because they don't take into consideration government subsidies such as rent subsidies and food stamps.
That is true for the poverty, but for the poverty levels, you're absolutely right about that. But it's also true that basically wages are stagnant, that wages have declined in the last 20 years or so. The median wage, while the rich, let's face it, their income is going through the roof, some 4 or 5 times what's been since the 80s. Does that multi-millionaire who makes $100 million a year, do they really need $200 million a year? Or would that $100 million be better spent letting middle-class people have a chance to have their kids go to college?
Well, I think a lot of this goes back to that crony capitalism. And it also goes back, I know I'm famous for talking about this, but the Federal Reserve, which perpetuates subsidies to the wealth. So through the quantitative easing program, which is this massive bond buying program, the government is literally pumping $85 billion a month into the biggest banks, and that's just money that's just sitting in these banks' coffers.
So you and I would agree that we should require these banks to loan the money to lower middle class people, give them a chance. Micro lending, for example, in Indonesia has done very well for helping people to get out of poverty.
Before we would take that route, because I don't think it's the most diplomatic and the most constitutional way to run a business, I think what we should do is stop feeding corporate subsidies to these companies.
On that, we absolutely agree. And now I do have my video ready that I wanted to play. So if you saw the first half of the show, I want to let you know why I'm endorsing Jennifer Wexton and encourage you to vote for her Tuesday, January 21st. Here is Jennifer Wexton. I thought we had the video ready. Tell you what, we can wait and we can do it after the break. Here it is.
Another by an intruder who forced his way in through her bedroom window. And for so many, traumatized again by facing the criminal in court. I'm Jennifer Wexton, and as a prosecutor, I put violent offenders in prison. In the Virginia Senate, I'll fight just as hard against Tea Party Republicans who would take away a woman's health care and her right to choose, even in cases of rape and incest. On Election Day, help me stand up for her.
Again, that's Jennifer Wexton. There is an election Tuesday, January 21st. For voters of Loudoun and Fairfax County, do not miss your chance to really determine the course of Virginia. Remember, it was just last year that the Virginia Senate passed a bill that initially, before there was a lot of outcry, required the state to, I don't know how else to say it, to insert a foreign object inside a woman against her will. Some would call that rape itself. Jennifer Wexton would stop this nonsense in the legislature. Please vote for her. We'll be right back after this.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folks, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
AmericanHeart.org.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. My guest is Perry M. Boring. She's a contributor to Forbes and an RT correspondent. And we're talking about basically the war on poverty. We have different takes on it, but whether the government should do its best to promote to try to slow down income inequality. I want to, I guess, deal with some basic philosophical points. Do you agree that there should be a safety net, a basic minimum that every American citizen should have? I would argue it's food, shelter, healthcare, and education. What do you think?
I think there can be a safety net for those who fall through the cracks.
Okay.
But I mean, very, very, very limited.
Well, for example, I don't think that we should give to people in prison more than a poor person who hasn't committed a crime outside. I mean, in prison, you get a roof over your head, you get 3 square meals a day, you get health care if you need it, and you get a basic education. At least those minimums should be provided to every American citizen if they can't afford to do it themselves. Does that sound fair?
In a very limited scope.
In a very limited scope. I'm not saying filet mignon. I'm not saying filet mignon, and I'm not saying cosmetic surgery. I'm saying the basic minimums. Okay. In order to rise out of poverty, would you agree education is the main ticket out? There are other tickets out, but that's the main way for people to get out of poverty.
I don't think today anymore. No,
really?
I really don't. I don't think the cost of an education is worth it, and it's really what's keeping me from going back to school. I don't think it's worth it to go tens of thousands, even hundreds of $1,000s in debt for a piece of paper that may or may not get me a job when I graduate.
I'll tell you something. When my father went to college, this is some years ago, in the 50s and 60s, my father could work a summer job, and that was enough to pay for a state school, in-state tuition at the University of Michigan. That's not true anymore. And one of the things that I think government aid strives to do is to make it so you can put yourself through college without being
But Mark,
tens of thousands of dollars in debt.
The reason why education is so expensive today is because the government's been subsidizing it, and because the government's been making education free for everybody. It actually makes it more expensive for everybody.
Well, it's free if you got a scholarship. It's free if you get student loans. Well, it's a person can go to school without paying for it. But the reason why tuition rates are increasing is because the government's been giving massive subsidies to education. Okay, but if they did not, let's look at just recent presidents, right? President Obama grew up very poor with a single mother. President Clinton grew up very poor with a single mother. A lot of people don't know that Mitt Romney's father also took welfare for a couple of years. All of these people achieved greatness because they were sustained as kids when their parents fell into poverty. It seems to me that the only reason why President Obama is our president, President Clinton, and so forth, is because they were able to get a good quality education and rise to their talents. If we deny that to kids,
I think there's a lot more that goes on behind the works than just going to school.
But school is a ticket out of poverty. I mean, otherwise people are going to have to work at McDonald's or something like that, or Walmart.
What's wrong with that?
Well, you don't make very much. I'll tell you what's wrong with Walmart. One of the things Walmart does is if you work for Walmart, they don't provide health care for you. So when Walmart comes into town...
When you work at Walmart, I mean, I took a minimum wage job when I was younger, and my first job I worked
And was it enough for you to live, to take care of all your expenses?
It was a terrible job. I hated it, but it gave me the skills to get a better job. And then that job gave me a better job to get an even better job, and so on and so forth. And to this point, I have a job where I can pay all my bills, and I'm doing fine at this point. But
okay, but half the people on minimum wage are taking care of their families. Shouldn't people make enough to at least afford that their kids don't go hungry, that their kids get health care, so that we don't need to rely? Because when Walmart comes in, you've admitted you agree with it with a basic safety net. Walmart comes in and we have to provide more welfare to people because they're paying them so little.
Well, I don't like the model that Walmart has set up to where you go in and they set you up with their HR department and then they sign you up for all these government programs, because it's basically just using the government.
They're basically admitting that they're not paying their employees enough.
But instead of forcing forcing businesses to run their company a certain way, we should just eliminate these government subsidies to the companies.
Then we have more. Well, no. Okay, I agree eliminating subsidies to the companies, but I don't agree with eliminating subsidies to individuals. Individuals need to survive, and it seems to me that rather than, if you don't want the government to pay for all of that, what's the best way to make corporations pay a decent wage to people? The minimum wage. If we were to keep wages today at where they were in the 1960s, wages would be $10 an hour. Interesting, if we were to keep up with productivity gains, they'd be $20 an hour. But I'm not asking for that.
But that's not business's fault. That's the government's fault. That's the government's fault for inflating our currency. Since 1913, our currency has devalued 95%.
But workers are more productive. I'm talking about real wages.
Yes, productivity has increased.
I'm not talking about
absolutely.
inflation. I'm talking about real wages. In other words, subtract for inflation. So inflation has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. In fact, if you were to take account, if you weren't
it has a
to
lot
take account
to do
of
with
inflation,
it. Your money doesn't go anywhere.
It would be much, much higher. It wouldn't be $10. It would be $100. And so I'm saying, if you take out inflation, just to keep up with what they could buy in the 1960s, it would be $10 an hour. And it seems to me, and again, that doesn't account for productivity. What that means is that all the productivity of workers that are earning $7.25 an hour, they'd be earning $20 an hour. So $10 of that productivity just went to the employer, went to stock owners, went to people, not to themselves. Even though workers are more than twice productive.
They deserve that money. They built the company.
But the workers' productivity.
Okay, so what? All right, so if we make this minimum wage, we make minimum wage. I don't know, whatever you want. You wanted $10. Okay, so then we're taking profit away from the CEOs, from the shareholders, whatnot.
Oh no, the CEO. How many corporate jets? He'll only have 6, not 7.
Okay. So why don't we just get rid of the CEO altogether? Why don't we just get rid of the company altogether?
Why don't we just get rid of government altogether? We could all live in anarchy in Somalia.
Why don't we just
live happily among the pirates?
Why don't we just get rid of Walmart altogether? Then all those people that work there will be completely unemployed and in a much better position, right?
It's easy to argue reductio ad absurdum. Let's get rid of government. Let's get rid of corporations. I don't want to get rid of corporations. I don't want to get rid of government.
My point is, where do we stop?
I want to regulate them. Where do we stop? How about where we were in the 1960s? That seems like a decent place to start. I'll tell you one of the things minimum wage does. And this is something that Henry Ford understood when he paid his workers to do his Model Ts. Henry Ford said, "I've got to pay my workers enough so they can afford to buy my products." And what you find is that when CEOs get hundreds of millions of dollars, they put it in the bank. They're like Scrooge and their gold pieces.
But no one's forcing these people to work here or there at Walmart or at McDonald's or whatever.
They have to eat, Perrianne.
No one's forcing them to work there.
They have to work somewhere, or they're going to be on government aid, which you don't support either.
I mean, they're on it anyways, according to you.
Well, the Walmart workers are. That's correct. They are, because they're not being paid enough.
The problem with minimum wage is it increases the cost of labor. Whenever you make something more expensive, you get less of it. Just the simple supply and demand laws of economics. So what you're doing is you're going to make life better for those who are going to benefit from it, but then the companies are going to hire less people because they're not going to be able to afford that.
Not necessarily.
So unemployment is going to actually go up under this.
Not necessarily. In the studies I've shown, actually have shown that not to be true, and I realize that's counterintuitive. But part of it is these wages are so low and the money is so little in the scheme of things that it turns out that if you pay workers a little bit more, then everyone gets paid a little bit more, and people have more money in their pockets and they can buy more products, and that makes the economy grow, and suddenly they actually make more profits than they were to begin with.
But that's not growing productivity, and that's how you grow in an economy. All you're doing by increasing the minimum wage is redistributing the same. You're just moving the same money around. You're not growing the pie any bigger. You're just slicing the same one differently.
Let's talk about what productivity is. Productivity is the capacity of an individual worker to do better than they did in the past. Right? So if a worker made 10, I don't want to say widgets because that sounds so economist. Let's say 10 pens, 100, they'll make more than 10, made 100 ballpoint pens in the 1960s, they can make 300 ballpoint pens now. Okay? It seems to me that the worker who's much faster and much more creative and making those ballpoint pens faster should be paid more, not that they're making more pens, but it turns out that all of the increase in productivity, even the workers that are working longer hours and working harder, it's all going to the CEO who already has hundreds of millions of dollars. Shouldn't workers be able to take home a piece of what they do?
when you increase the price of labor, where are you going to pay for that? That's got to come out of somewhere. It's going to make the price. It's going to make the price of the pen more expensive.
$2 trillion worth of
do you want to pay more for the pens?
You don't have to. You know why not? The corporations today have more cash, and I'm talking not just total $2 trillion, but even when you take away inflation, I'm talking about historically, they are sitting on more mounds of cash than at any time in American history.
But it's not the government's role to tell them how to spend their money any more than it's the government has the right to tell you how to spend the money in your pocket.
Let me tell you why I think it is. Because I think corporations are not people. I know there are people that argue that it is. Corporations are a government entity. They're licensed by the government. They're licensed by state government. They get special rights. If you or I do something wrong, we commit fraud, we go to jail. Corporation commits fraud, it doesn't go to jail because you can't jail a corporation. You and I are mortal. Corporation never gets sick. It only dies if it doesn't make a profit. So the point is that corporations, most importantly, have limited liability. You or I have an accident, we have to pay for the damages. Corporation has an accident, the shareholders don't have to pay for anything. So they have all these government benefits. It seems to me with this extra government benefit comes government responsibility. People don't have to choose to be a corporation. They could choose to run a company like you or me.
People don't have to choose to work or shop at Walmart, but people do because they like low prices. And the reason why there's low prices is because of their business model. Like it or not, it's still a very successful company, and a lot of people and a lot of poor people benefit for having.
Do you know what was also a successful company? You ever heard of the company towns? If you study 100 years ago and you find 1890s America, there'd be like this one town and everyone would work in the factory and the factory owners would own all the stores. And so the people were too poor to leave the town and they were too poor to shop at anywhere but the company store, and the company store would make lots of profits because they was basically not paying its workers enough to go anywhere else. It's a self-perpetuating
We're not talking
poverty.
about a monopoly here. This is not a monopoly.
No, but there are people who are too poor to afford anything but things at Walmart. And the answer is, it seems to me that if we paid people, required Walmart to offer a minimum wage, the same minimum wage it offered, we had a great economy in the 1960s. No one could argue we didn't have growth in the 1960s or the 1950s. We had minimum wages back then. It seems to me if we require Walmart to pay the same minimum wage they paid in the 1960s, we can have that growth and working class people can afford enough to actually put more money into the economy. How about it?
It sounds wonderful, but just because of the laws of economics and the beauty of economics, that's not how it works. And when you put price floors and price ceilings and wage controls, I mean, these are Marxist policies. These are socialist policies, and history shows they don't work.
Well,
in fact,
I'm not talking about price controls, though. Frankly, the last president to do that was a Republican, Richard Nixon. But last point, we only got about a minute left.
Not my favorite president.
One of the things that Democrats are trying to do, and some Republicans, is to expand unemployment insurance for the long-term unemployed. Because again, if people don't have enough to eat, they're more likely to turn to crime, and they're more likely to give up on jobs and just walk out. This unemployment insurance, this isn't a huge amount of money. We're talking about maybe $200-300 a month. Can you support the extension of long-term unemployed insurance?
Do I want to pay people not to work? No.
Even if you understand that you actually need some money to survive, so you go out and look for a job rather than to look for food to eat.
No, because studies actually show that when employment benefits run out, that's when people actually start getting jobs because they're then motivated to start looking for
I've
a
seen
job.
those studies, and what they seem to show.
You'd have to be an idiot not to want to work, be paid to not work.
You know
that is a great deal. Please pay me not to work.
First of all,
free vacation by the government, count me in.
It's insurance. It's very little, and most people on unemployment insurance are actually desperately looking for jobs. There are very few poor middle-class Americans in the moocher class. I would argue that they're the wealthy people. They're in the moocher class, but we're going to have to save this debate for another day. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great to be on. Thank you.
Again, do not forget to vote. Tuesday, January 21st, vote for Jennifer Wexton. We'll have more of the Inside Scoop next week.